Writing a clear and concise results section. Introduction. Dear listeners, the results section of a legal research paper presents empirical findings or analytical outcomes in a clear, objective manner. It should focus on reporting data and observations without interpretation, leaving that for the discussion section. Key elements include a logical structure, appropriate use of tables and figures, and clear explanations of statistical analyses. Researchers should present results that directly address research questions or hypotheses, avoiding extraneous information. The writing style should be concise and precise, using discipline-specific terminology judiciously. For quantitative studies, this section typically includes descriptive statistics, inferential analyses, and effect sizes. Qualitative research results often feature identified themes, patterns, or key findings from data analysis. Effective results sections guide readers through findings systematically, using subheadings to organize complex information. When structuring the results section, consider beginning with an overview paragraph that outlines the main findings and the order in which they will be presented. This roadmap helps readers navigate the section more easily. Ensure that each paragraph focuses on a specific result or set of related results, maintaining a clear and logical flow throughout the section. Use transitional phrases to connect different results and show how they relate to each other, building a coherent narrative of your findings. Presenting quantitative results. When presenting quantitative results, start with descriptive statistics to provide an overview of the data. This may include measures of central tendency, mean, median, mode, and dispersion, standard deviation, range. For inferential statistics, clearly state the type of analysis performed, the test statistic, degrees of freedom, p-value, and effect size. Use tables and figures to summarize complex data sets, ensuring they are self-explanatory with clear titles and labels. When reporting regression analyses, include model fit statistics, coefficients, and standard errors. For survey research, present response rates and sample characteristics before delving into specific findings. Always report both statistically significant and non-significant results to avoid bias. Use consistent decimal places and appropriate precision in numerical reporting. Consider the audience's statistical literacy when deciding how much detail to include in the main text versus appendices. In addition to these basics, consider providing context for your statistical findings. For example, if you're reporting on a legal trend over time, you might compare your results to broader societal changes or legal developments during the same period. This contextualization can help readers understand the significance of your findings. When presenting complex statistical models, consider using visual aids such as path diagrams or forest plots to illustrate relationships between variables. These can make your results more accessible to readers who may not be as familiar with advanced statistical techniques. Qualitative results presentation. Qualitative results require a different approach, focusing on themes, patterns, and illustrative examples from the data. Begin with an overview of the analytical process, including coding methods and theme development. Present major themes or categories identified, supported by representative quotes or examples from the data. Use a hierarchical structure to organize findings, moving from broad themes to specific subthemes. Include frequency counts or percentages to indicate the prevalence of themes when appropriate. Balance between providing rich, detailed descriptions and maintaining clarity and conciseness. Consider using visual aids like concept maps or thematic networks to illustrate relationships between themes. Address any discrepant cases or contradictory findings to demonstrate the complexity of the data. For case studies, provide a brief context for each case before presenting specific findings. When presenting qualitative data, it's important to strike a balance between providing enough detail to support your interpretations and avoiding overwhelming the reader with too much raw data. One effective strategy is to use a combination of summary statements and illustrative quotes. For example, you might state a theme you've identified, briefly explain its significance, and then provide one or two particularly compelling quotes that exemplify this theme. This approach allows you to present your analysis while still giving readers a sense of the original data. Structuring the results section. Structure the results section to mirror the order of research questions or hypotheses presented in the introduction. Use clear, informative headings and subheadings to guide readers through different aspects of the findings. Begin with a brief overview of the section's contents, then present results in a logical sequence, typically from most to least important. For complex studies, consider using a hierarchical numbering system for easy reference. Ensure a smooth flow between subsections, using transitional phrases to connect related findings. End each major subsection with a brief summary of key points before moving to the next. Consider creating a summary table or figure that synthesizes main findings across different analyses or themes. For mixed methods research, decide whether to present quantitative and qualitative results separately or integrate them based on research questions. In legal research, it's often effective to structure your results around key legal concepts or principles that your study addresses. For example, if you're examining the application of a particular legal doctrine across different jurisdictions, you might organize your results by jurisdiction, then by elements of the doctrine. This approach can help legal practitioners and scholars more easily connect your findings to existing legal frameworks. Additionally, consider including a brief explanation of any legal tests or standards you've applied in your analysis, as this can provide important context for your results. Effective use of tables and figures. Tables and figures are powerful tools for presenting complex data concisely. Choose the most appropriate format based on the type of data and the message you want to convey. Tables are ideal for presenting precise numerical data, while graphs are better for showing trends or relationships. Ensure each table or figure is referenced in the text, explaining key points without repeating all details. Number tables and figures consecutively and provide clear, informative titles. Use consistent formatting and style across all visual elements. For tables, use clear row and column headings, and consider using footnotes for additional explanations. For figures, choose appropriate scales and labels, and use color judiciously, ensuring readability in both color and grayscale. Avoid cluttered or overly complex visuals that may confuse readers. Consider combining related data into a single table or figure to facilitate comparisons. In legal research, certain types of visualizations can be particularly effective. For example, timelines can be useful for showing the evolution of legal doctrines or the progression of a case through the court system. Network diagrams can illustrate relationships between different legal concepts or actors. Heat maps can be effective for showing patterns in large datasets, such as voting patterns among judges. When creating figures, consider the conventions of legal publishing. For example, many law journals still publish in black and white, so ensure your figures are comprehensible without color. Always provide a text alternative for any information presented in tables or figures to ensure accessibility. Developing a compelling discussion section. Introduction. The discussion section transforms raw data into meaningful insights, connecting empirical findings to broader legal theory and practice. It demands a nuanced approach, elevating results into a narrative that interprets and contextualizes them within existing legal knowledge. A well-crafted discussion transcends mere recapitulation, offering a platform for critical analysis and constructive contribution to legal discourse. This section elucidates strategies for in-depth analysis of results, effective integration with existing literature, exploration of practical and theoretical implications, and crafting an engaging narrative. The importance of balancing rigorous critique with constructive advancement of legal understanding underscores the discussion's role in shaping the impact and relevance of legal scholarship. The primary objectives encompass interpreting results within the broader legal context, evaluating the study's contribution to existing literature, and exploring implications for theory and practice. In legal research, the discussion section often serves as a bridge between academic legal theory and practical legal application. It's where researchers can explore how their findings might influence legal doctrine, judicial decision-making, or legislative policy. This section should not only interpret the results in light of existing legal principles but also consider how these findings might challenge or extend current legal thinking. For example, if your research examines the application of a legal standard in practice, your discussion might consider whether your findings suggest the need for refinement or reconsideration of that standard. Interpreting results in legal context. Interpreting results within the broader legal context requires a deep understanding of both the specific research area and the wider legal landscape. Begin by revisiting the study's objectives and hypotheses, explicitly stating how the findings address each. Analyze results in light of existing legal theories and frameworks, explaining how they support, challenge, or extend current understanding. Consider the practical implications of findings for legal practice, policy, and future research. Discuss any unexpected results, offering potential explanations and their significance. Address how the study's limitations might affect the interpretation of results. Use specific examples from the data to illustrate key points and support interpretations. Consider alternative explanations for the findings, demonstrating a balanced and critical approach. Discuss how the results contribute to resolving existing debates or controversies in the field. In legal research, it's particularly important to consider the broader implications of your findings for legal doctrine and practice. For example, if your study examines how lower courts have applied a Supreme Court decision, discuss what your findings suggest about the clarity or effectiveness of that decision. If your research reveals inconsistencies in how a law is applied, consider discussing the implications for legal certainty and the rule of law. When interpreting your results, also consider how they might be viewed by different stakeholders in the legal system: judges, lawyers, policymakers, and the public. This multifaceted approach can help to highlight the full significance of your findings. Situating findings in existing literature. Situating research findings within the existing corpus of legal literature demonstrates the study's contribution and advances legal discourse. Compare results with previous studies, identifying points of convergence and divergence. Explicitly articulate how the current study extends knowledge, addressing gaps in the literature. Use results to challenge or support existing legal theories, adopting a nuanced approach. For example, our findings on judicial decision-making in intellectual property cases align with Smith's 2018 observations but diverge from Jones' 2020 conclusions, potentially due to methodological differences. Highlight the novelty of contributions judiciously, balancing confidence with humility. Discuss how the study's methodological approach or theoretical framework offers new insights into previously studied phenomena. Consider the implications of the findings for ongoing debates in legal scholarship. When situating your findings in the legal literature, it's important to consider not just academic legal scholarship, but also relevant case law, statutes, and regulatory frameworks. This comprehensive approach can help to demonstrate the practical relevance of your research to legal professionals. Additionally, don't limit your literature review to law. If your research touches on interdisciplinary areas, consider how your findings relate to relevant literature in fields such as economics, sociology, or political science. This can help to highlight the broader significance of your work and may suggest new avenues for future interdisciplinary legal research. Practical implications and policy recommendations. Translating academic findings into practical implications for legal professionals and policymakers bridges the gap between research and application. Carefully consider how results might inform or challenge current legal practices and policies. Provide specific, actionable recommendations based on the research findings. For instance, our study on the effectiveness of risk assessment tools in bail decisions suggests the need for re-evaluating their use in the criminal justice system. Discuss potential challenges and counterarguments to proposed reforms, demonstrating a balanced analysis. Frame implications in terms that resonate with legal practitioners and policymakers, possibly developing concrete guidelines or action plans. Consider the broader societal impact of the research findings and recommendations. Address potential unintended consequences of proposed changes, showing foresight and comprehensive thinking. When developing policy recommendations, it's crucial to consider the practical realities of the legal system. This might include considering resource constraints, institutional inertia, or potential resistance from various stakeholders. For each recommendation, try to anticipate potential obstacles to implementation and suggest strategies for overcoming these challenges. It can also be helpful to provide a range of options, from ideal scenarios to more easily achievable short-term steps. Additionally, consider how your recommendations might be implemented at different levels, from individual legal practitioners to court systems to legislative bodies. This multi-level approach can increase the likelihood that your research will have practical impact. Theoretical contributions and advancements. The discussion section provides a platform for advancing legal theory by connecting empirical findings or doctrinal analyses to broader theoretical frameworks. Develop new theoretical insights or refine existing theories, balancing innovation with respect for established scholarship. Clearly articulate how the current research extends or modifies previous understandings. For example, while Hart's concept of law as a union of primary and secondary rules remains influential, our analysis suggests the need for a third category of adaptive rules that can evolve with scientific understanding. Identify theoretical implications across different areas of law to highlight the broader significance of the research. Discuss how the findings contribute to interdisciplinary understanding, bridging legal theory with other relevant fields. Consider proposing new conceptual models or frameworks based on the research findings. In advancing legal theory, it's important to show how your theoretical contributions can lead to new research questions or methodological approaches. For example, if you're proposing a new framework for understanding a legal concept, discuss how this framework might be applied or tested in future studies. Additionally, consider how your theoretical advancements might influence legal education. Could your findings suggest new ways of teaching certain legal concepts? How might they change the way law students are trained to think about particular areas of law? By connecting your theoretical contributions to both future research and legal education, you can demonstrate the far-reaching implications of your work. Crafting a compelling narrative. Transform complex findings into an engaging and coherent narrative that resonates with readers. Develop a compelling narrative arc guiding readers through result interpretation, significance, and broader implications. Use vivid anecdotes or examples to illustrate key points and maintain reader engagement. For instance, when Judge X faced the landmark case of State A v. State B, few could have predicted the far-reaching consequences of her decision. Employ topic sentences and transitions to ensure logical flow. Address counterarguments within the narrative to demonstrate intellectual rigor and anticipate reader skepticism. Use rhetorical questions to provoke thought and deepen reader engagement with the material. Balance analytical depth with accessibility, adapting the writing style to the target audience while maintaining scholarly rigor. In legal writing, storytelling can be a powerful tool for making complex legal concepts more accessible and memorable. Consider starting your discussion with a real-world scenario or legal case that encapsulates the core issues your research addresses. As you progress through your discussion, you can return to this example, showing how your findings shed new light on the scenario or suggest different approaches to similar cases. This narrative thread can help to unify your discussion and clearly illustrate the practical relevance of your research. Remember, however, to balance storytelling with analytical rigor, the anecdotes should serve to illuminate your findings, not replace careful analysis. Formulating research conclusions and recommendations. Introduction. The formulation of conclusions and recommendations is a critical culmination of legal research, translating scholarly inquiry into actionable insights and theoretical advancements. This final section synthesizes key findings, reinforces the study's significance, and proposes concrete steps for legal thought and practice. As the last impression left on readers, it holds the power to influence legal discourse and potentially shape policy and practice. The art of crafting concise yet impactful conclusions, coupled with well-grounded recommendations, ensures that research implications resonate with both academic and practitioner audiences. This section elucidates strategies for distilling complex research into core findings, developing actionable recommendations, and articulating broader implications for legal theory and practice, ultimately guiding researchers in maximizing the impact and relevance of their scholarly contributions. In legal research, conclusions and recommendations often have the potential to influence not just academic discourse, but also real-world legal practice and policy. As such, it's crucial to strike a balance between academic rigor and practical applicability. Your conclusions should clearly articulate how your findings contribute to legal knowledge, while your recommendations should provide concrete, feasible steps for implementing these insights in legal practice or policy making. Consider the different stakeholders who might be influenced by your research: judges, lawyers, legislators, regulators, and even the general public, and tailor your conclusions and recommendations to address their specific needs and interests. Synthesizing key findings. The synthesis of key findings demands a balance between comprehensive coverage and concise presentation. Distill complex analyses into core insights that directly address the study's objectives and research questions. For instance, in a study on alternative dispute resolution, ADR, in commercial litigation, a concise synthesis might state, "This research demonstrates that ADR mechanisms, particularly mediation, significantly reduce case resolution time by an average of 40% compared to traditional litigation, while maintaining high levels of party satisfaction." Prioritize the most significant results with the greatest implications for legal theory or practice. Present conclusions in a logical sequence, moving from specific empirical findings to broader theoretical implications. Address unexpected or contradictory findings with transparency and nuanced explanation. Consider using bullet points or numbered lists to highlight key conclusions succinctly. When synthesizing findings in legal research, it's often helpful to frame your conclusions in terms of their implications for legal doctrine, judicial decision-making, or legislative policy. For example, if your research examines the application of a legal standard across different jurisdictions, your synthesis might highlight patterns of consistency or inconsistency, and what these patterns suggest about the clarity or effectiveness of the standard. If your findings challenge prevailing legal assumptions or practices, be sure to articulate this clearly, explaining how your research supports this challenge. Remember to address all of your initial research questions or hypotheses, even if some of your findings were inconclusive. This demonstrates thoroughness and can highlight areas needing further research. Developing actionable recommendations. Translate research findings into actionable recommendations tailored to specific stakeholders, such as policymakers, legal practitioners, or fellow researchers. For instance, based on a study of judicial decision-making in intellectual property cases, recommend, for policymakers, consider implementing specialized training programs for judges handling complex technological patent disputes to enhance ruling quality and consistency. Ensure recommendations are specific, feasible, and clearly linked to research findings. Prioritize based on impact and urgency, focusing attention on the most critical actions. Balance short-term and long-term recommendations to provide a comprehensive roadmap for change. Consider potential implementation challenges and address them proactively in your recommendations. Use action-oriented language to emphasize the practical nature of the suggestions. Where appropriate, provide estimates of potential impacts or benefits of implementing the recommendations. In developing recommendations for legal research, it's important to consider the various levels at which change can occur in the legal system. Some recommendations might be directed at individual legal practitioners, suggesting new approaches or considerations in their day-to-day work. Others might be aimed at institutional-level changes, such as modifications to court procedures or law school curricula. Still others might suggest legislative reforms or policy changes at a national level. By addressing recommendations at multiple levels, you increase the likelihood of your research having a broad impact. Additionally, consider providing a range of recommendations, from ideal scenarios to more easily achievable short-term steps. This can help stakeholders implement changes incrementally, making your recommendations more feasible and likely to be adopted. Articulating theoretical and practical implications. Explicitly link theoretical contributions to existing legal frameworks, highlighting how the research extends, challenges, or refines current understanding. For example, our findings on privacy law's application to emerging technologies suggest the need for a more flexible, principle-based approach to privacy regulation, challenging the current paradigm of technology-specific legislation. Identify implications across different areas of law to underscore the research's broad relevance. Address practical implications for legal professionals to ensure relevance beyond academia. For instance, for practicing attorneys, our findings highlight the increasing importance of data analytic skills in predicting litigation outcomes, suggesting a need for professional development in this area. Discuss how the research contributes to ongoing debates in the field and suggest avenues for future research. Consider the long-term implications of the findings for legal education and professional training. When articulating implications, it's crucial to consider both the immediate and long-term effects of your research. In the legal field, your findings might have implications for current cases or legal disputes, as well as for the future development of law and policy. Consider how your research might influence judicial reasoning, legislative decision-making, or regulatory approaches. Also, think about the broader societal implications of your findings. How might they affect public understanding of law, access to justice, or the balance of rights and responsibilities in society? By considering these wider implications, you can demonstrate the full significance and potential impact of your research. Tailoring conclusions for diverse audiences. Dear listeners, recognize the diverse readership of legal research and tailor conclusions to resonate with various stakeholders while maintaining scholarly integrity. For academic audiences, emphasize theoretical contributions and methodological innovations. A conclusion aimed at scholars might state, this study's application of network analysis to judicial citations not only reveals patterns of legal influence but also introduces a novel methodological approach for mapping the evolution of legal doctrines. For practitioner audiences, focus on practical implications and actionable insights. When addressing policymakers, provide clear, concise summaries of key findings and their policy implications. Consider creating separate executive summaries or policy briefs tailored to specific audience needs. Use language and examples appropriate to each audience's expertise and interests. Highlight different aspects of the research based on what is most relevant to each audience group. When tailoring your conclusions for diverse audiences, consider the specific needs and interests of each group. For academic audiences, you might focus on how your research advances theoretical understanding or introduces new methodological approaches. For legal practitioners, emphasize how your findings can inform their day-to-day work, perhaps by suggesting new strategies or considerations in case preparation or client advice. For policymakers, highlight the potential impacts of your research on legislation or regulation, providing clear, evidence-based recommendations. For the general public or media, focus on the broader societal implications of your research, using accessible language and relatable examples. By tailoring your message to each audience, you can maximize the impact and reach of your research across different sectors of the legal and wider community. Ethical considerations and broader impact. Weave ethical considerations into the fabric of research conclusions, reflecting on the moral and societal implications of legal scholarship. Address ethical dimensions explicitly to demonstrate responsible research. For instance, in a study on AI in judicial decision-making, state, while our findings suggest potential efficiency gains from AI-assisted judging, they also raise profound ethical questions about algorithmic bias and the fundamental right to be judged by a human, necessitating careful consideration before implementation. Discuss ethical implications of research findings to highlight areas requiring further ethical scrutiny or policy development. Articulate the broader impact of the research beyond immediate legal contexts, demonstrating its relevance to wider societal issues and long-term legal developments. Highlight potential paradigm shifts or transformative impacts to capture readers' imagination. Discuss how the research contributes to addressing grand societal challenges to underscore its significance. In legal research, ethical considerations often intersect with fundamental principles of justice, fairness, and human rights. When discussing the broader impact of your research, consider how your findings might influence these foundational aspects of the legal system. For example, if your research touches on issues of access to justice, discuss how your findings might affect different socioeconomic groups or marginalized communities. If your work relates to emerging technologies or novel legal issues, consider the potential long-term ethical implications of different regulatory approaches. By thoroughly examining these ethical dimensions, you demonstrate a comprehensive understanding of your research's potential consequences and contribute to important discussions about the role of law in shaping a just and equitable society. Acknowledging limitations and suggesting future research directions. Introduction. Acknowledging limitations and suggesting future research directions are essential practices in legal scholarship, demonstrating academic integrity and fostering progress. This approach provides context for interpreting results and guides the evolution of legal research. By candidly addressing study boundaries and constraints, researchers show commitment to transparency and scientific rigor. Simultaneously, articulating future research avenues stimulates ongoing dialogue within the legal community. This section outlines strategies for constructively identifying and articulating limitations, as well as techniques for proposing meaningful future research directions. These practices enhance research credibility, demonstrate critical awareness, and engage readers in the ongoing nature of scientific inquiry, ultimately contributing to the advancement of legal knowledge and practice. In legal research, acknowledging limitations is particularly crucial due to the potential real-world implications of findings on law and policy. It's important to clearly articulate how limitations might affect the applicability or generalizability of your results in different legal contexts or jurisdictions. This not only demonstrates academic rigor but also helps prevent misapplication of your findings in legal practice or policymaking. When suggesting future research directions, consider both theoretical and practical avenues. This might include proposing studies that address your current limitations, as well as research that builds upon your findings to explore new legal questions or challenges. Identifying and articulating methodological limitations. Methodological limitations are intrinsic to legal research and require careful identification and articulation. Common constraints include challenges in data collection, sample selection biases, and limitations in analytical approaches. For example, in an empirical study of plea bargaining practices, acknowledge, our reliance on court records may not fully capture negotiation process nuances, potentially omitting important contextual factors influencing plea decisions. Evaluate the impact of methodological choices by critically assessing how research design decisions affect study conclusions. When addressing sample selection limitations, state, while our study provides insights into judicial reasoning in intellectual property cases, the focus on federal circuit decisions may not reflect practices in other circuits or at the district court level. Discuss how these limitations might affect the generalizability or applicability of findings. Consider how future studies could address these methodological constraints. In legal research, methodological limitations often stem from the unique challenges of studying legal phenomena. For instance, the confidentiality of certain legal proceedings might limit access to data, or the complexity of legal systems might make it difficult to isolate variables. When discussing these limitations, it's important to explain not just what the limitations are, but why they exist and how they're inherent to legal research. This can help readers understand the challenges of conducting empirical legal research and appreciate the value of your findings despite these constraints. Additionally, consider discussing any innovative methodological approaches you use to mitigate limitations, as this can provide valuable insights for future researchers facing similar challenges. Addressing scope and data limitations. Scope limitations in legal research delineate the boundaries within which findings can be reliably applied. Define these boundaries with a nuanced understanding of the research context and its potential applications. For instance, in a study on data protection law implementation, specify, this research focuses on the EU's GDPR application in multinational corporations. Findings may not directly apply to small businesses or non-EU jurisdictions. Address geographic or jurisdictional scope limitations, given significant variations in legal systems and cultural contexts. Note temporal limitations, especially in rapidly evolving areas of law. Acknowledge data and resource limitations, such as restricted access to sensitive legal documents or incomplete records. For example, in a corporate environmental regulation compliance study, note, our analysis was limited by the unavailability of comprehensive environmental violation data across all states, potentially affecting the completeness of our compliance assessment. When addressing scope and data limitations in legal research, it's important to consider how these limitations might affect the practical application of your findings. For instance, if your study focuses on a specific jurisdiction, discuss how differences in legal systems might affect the applicability of your findings in other jurisdictions. If your research relies on a specific time frame, consider how changes in law or society since that period might influence the relevance of your findings. When dealing with data limitations, explain any steps you took to mitigate these issues, such as using multiple data sources or employing statistical techniques to account for missing data. This demonstrates a proactive approach to managing limitations and can provide valuable methodological insights for future researchers. Theoretical and conceptual limitations. Identify limitations in theoretical frameworks by critically examining the assumptions and boundaries of employed theories. For instance, in a study applying economic regulation theories to environmental law, acknowledge, while the economic efficiency model provides valuable insights, it may not fully capture non-economic values such as ecological preservation or intergenerational equity crucial in environmental decision-making. Address limitations in legal definitions or constructs, particularly important in comparative or interdisciplinary legal research. A study comparing privacy laws across jurisdictions might note, the varying cultural and legal understandings of privacy across studied jurisdictions limit the direct comparability of legal protections. Discuss how these theoretical limitations might affect the interpretation and application of research findings. Consider how future research could address these conceptual challenges, potentially by integrating multiple theoretical perspectives or developing new conceptual frameworks. In legal research, theoretical and conceptual limitations often arise from the complex, multifaceted nature of legal phenomena. When discussing these limitations, it's valuable to explore how different theoretical approaches might lead to different interpretations of your data. This can highlight the nuanced nature of legal analysis and the importance of considering multiple perspectives. Additionally, if your research crosses disciplinary boundaries, acknowledge any challenges in reconciling different disciplinary approaches or terminology. This can be particularly relevant in areas where law intersects with fields like economics, psychology, or technology. By thoroughly examining theoretical limitations, you can provide a more comprehensive understanding of your research's place within broader legal and interdisciplinary discourses. Suggesting future research directions. Identify promising areas for future legal research, often emerging from current study limitations and unanswered questions. Develop research questions based on current limitations to demonstrate a forward-thinking approach. For instance, following a study on mandatory arbitration clauses' impact, propose, future research should examine these clauses' long-term effects on consumer behavior and corporate accountability, addressing our cross-sectional analysis as temporal limitations. Suggest methodological innovations to overcome current research constraints. For example, to address self-reported data limitations in our legal ethics compliance study, future research could employ experimental designs or observational studies to directly assess ethical decision-making processes among legal professionals. Propose interdisciplinary research directions to broaden legal scholarship scope and impact. Suggest comparative or cross-jurisdictional studies, particularly valuable in an increasingly globalized legal landscape. When suggesting future research directions in legal studies, consider both theoretical and practical avenues for advancement. On the theoretical side, you might propose studies that could refine or expand legal doctrines based on your findings. For example, if your research reveals inconsistencies in how a legal principle is applied, you could suggest studies aimed at developing a more coherent theoretical framework. On the practical side, consider proposing research that could directly inform legal practice or policymaking. This might include empirical studies to test the effectiveness of new legal approaches or interdisciplinary research to address complex societal issues that intersect with law. Additionally, consider suggesting longitudinal studies that could track the long-term impacts of legal changes or decisions, as these can provide valuable insights for future legal development. Framing limitations as research opportunities. Recast methodological weaknesses as research questions to inspire innovative approaches to persistent challenges. For instance, reframe a limitation in an online dispute resolution study as, the inability to directly observe participant interactions in virtual mediation sessions highlights the need for future research employing observational or ethnographic methods to capture digital communication nuances in legal processes. Use scope limitations to suggest broader studies, expanding the applicability and impact of legal research. Propose, While our study focused on environmental regulations in manufacturing, future research should examine how these principles apply across diverse industries, including emerging technologies and service-based businesses. Use theoretical gaps identified in current research as springboards for future investigations. For example, our findings reveal the inadequacy of current theoretical models in explaining judicial behavior in cases involving emerging technologies. Future research should aim to develop more nuanced theories accounting for the interplay between technological complexity and legal decision-making. Ladies and gentlemen, in framing limitations as research opportunities, it's valuable to consider how addressing these limitations could not only improve understanding of the specific issue at hand, but also advance legal research methodologies more broadly. For instance, if your study was limited by difficulties in accessing certain legal data, you might propose research into developing new data collection methods that could benefit the entire field of legal empirical research. Similarly, if your study revealed gaps in existing legal theories, you could suggest interdisciplinary collaborations to develop more comprehensive theoretical frameworks. By framing limitations this way, you transform potential weaknesses into catalysts for innovation in legal research, demonstrating the dynamic and evolving nature of legal scholarship. Preparing research findings for different audiences: academic, professional, public. Introduction. The effective communication of legal research findings to diverse audiences is paramount in maximizing the impact and relevance of scholarly work. The dissemination of legal research extends far beyond the confines of academia, encompassing legal professionals, policymakers, and the general public. Each audience presents unique challenges and opportunities for knowledge transfer, necessitating tailored approaches to research presentation. This section elucidates strategies for adapting research communications to meet the varied needs and expectations of different stakeholders while maintaining the integrity and rigor of the original research. In the legal field, the ability to effectively communicate research findings to different audiences is particularly crucial due to the potential real-world implications of legal scholarship on policy, practice, and individual rights. Academic findings that remain confined to scholarly journals may miss opportunities to influence legal practice or policymaking. Conversely, oversimplified presentations of complex legal research to public audiences may lead to misunderstandings or misapplications of the law. Therefore, developing skills in tailoring research communications is not just about effective dissemination, but also about ensuring the responsible and accurate translation of legal knowledge across different sectors of society. Understanding diverse audiences. The effective dissemination of legal research hinges on a nuanced understanding of the diverse audiences that comprise its readership. These audiences can be broadly categorized into academic, professional, and public spheres, each with distinct characteristics, needs, and levels of legal expertise. Academic audiences, typically consisting of fellow scholars and researchers, demand rigorous methodological explanations and theoretical contributions. Legal professionals, including practicing attorneys, judges, and legal consultants, prioritize practical implications and actionable insights derived from research. Policymakers and legislators seek clear, concise summaries of research findings that directly inform policy decisions. The general public, while often overlooked, represents a crucial audience for legal research, particularly in areas that impact everyday life or address matters of public interest. Conducting thorough audience analysis is essential for tailoring research communications effectively. This process involves identifying key stakeholders, assessing their knowledge levels, and understanding their specific interests in the research topic. For instance, a study on privacy law implications of emerging technologies might be presented differently to data protection scholars, corporate legal departments, legislative committees, and consumer advocacy groups. When considering diverse audiences in legal research, it's important to recognize that these categories are not mutually exclusive and that individuals may belong to multiple audience groups. For example, a judge might be interested in both the theoretical underpinnings and practical applications of your research. Similarly, a policy advisor might need to understand both the legal technicalities and the broader societal implications of your findings. Therefore, while tailoring your communication to specific audiences is important, it's also valuable to create layered communications that can speak to multiple audience levels simultaneously. This might involve structuring your research outputs with different levels of detail, allowing readers to engage with the material at their preferred depth of understanding. Communicating to academic audiences. Academic audiences in legal research demand a high level of scholarly rigor, theoretical sophistication, and methodological precision. When presenting to this group, researchers must emphasize their theoretical contributions and situate their work within ongoing academic debates in law. For instance, a study on judicial decision-making might frame its findings in relation to existing theories of legal realism or formalism, explicitly stating how the research advances or challenges these paradigms. The structure of papers for academic legal journals typically follows a standardized format, including a comprehensive literature review, detailed methodology section, and in-depth discussion of results. Researchers should use discipline-specific terminology judiciously, balancing the need for precision with clarity of expression. When addressing interdisciplinary insights, care must be taken to explain concepts that may be unfamiliar to a purely legal audience. For example, a law and economics paper might need to elucidate economic principles for legal scholars. Effective academic presentations often employ a funnel approach, starting with broad theoretical contexts and narrowing to specific findings and implications. Anticipating and addressing potential peer reviewer concerns proactively can strengthen the presentation of research. This might involve acknowledging limitations upfront or providing additional justification for methodological choices. Dear listeners, when communicating to academic audiences in legal research, it's crucial to demonstrate not only the validity and reliability of your findings but also their significance within the broader context of legal scholarship. This often involves explicitly stating how your research contributes to existing legal theories or doctrines, challenges prevailing assumptions, or opens new avenues for legal inquiry. Consider framing your research in terms of its potential to resolve long-standing debates in the field or to bridge gaps between different areas of law. Additionally, be prepared to engage with critical feedback from peers. Academic legal audiences often value robust debate and critical analysis, so presenting your research in a way that invites thoughtful discussion can enhance its reception. Finally, consider how your research methodology might be applicable to other areas of legal study, as innovative methodological approaches can be as valuable to the academic community as the specific findings themselves. Thank you for the attention.